Hey, figured I would do a video on the passing of Eddie Van Halen, and just talk a little bit about me as a kid, as a guitar player. I was already, I was 8 years old by the time I even found out who he was, and it's an interesting story. In fact, that was 1988, so he had already been around for 10 years, in the mainstream, and I didn't know who he was. I was just an 8-year-old kid, and I was at a garage sale with my sister, and she knew I was just getting into guitar at the time. That's the year I started guitar, when I was 8 years old, and she knew, like, we were at a garage sale. She saw all these cassettes, and I was going through them, and she says, "You should get those two." And there was two cassettes, and I don't know why, I didn't know who they were as a kid, and I thought, yeah, what does she know? She doesn't know what she's talking about or something. You know what I mean? Kids are like that, like, just. But I decided, like, she was adamant I should grab those two tapes, and I got home, and I put them in my ghetto blaster, as we called them back then, and just totally mind blown. And it was actually the perfect introduction to Van Halen, because it was Van Halen 1 and Van Halen 2, and that was my introduction to Van Halen, and I was just like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, even though I had heard all the 80s shredders already in the 80s. Like, I'd heard a lot of them, but yet Eddie Van Halen, there was, and I always kind of realized this as I went along, is there was always something more. There was always something more he was doing. Yes, there was players that eventually came out and played faster, more notes, whatever, but he had this thing where he could dynamically, with his volume control, for example, just go from super clean to, like, the heaviest distortion. Never sounded shrill, always sounded just so awesome, no matter what his setting was on his guitar, with one pickup. And he could play extremely aggressively, yet he could also play really delicate, and sometimes almost with a sense of humor you could see in there, like in his playing. It's almost as if he was so good that he didn't take himself always completely seriously. Like, sometimes he'd put a sense of humor in his guitar playing, because he had nothing to prove to anybody. He was the best, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, no, this is, yeah, definitely. Today I got a text from my boss, who's also a musician, and he told me that Eddie Van Halen died, and it was just like, wow, like, it's crazy. Super sad. Obviously we wish he would have had a lot more years, because, yeah, one of the best. And I never learned all his stuff note for note. I learned bits and pieces here and there of his stuff, but it wasn't so much the songs and the notes and everything else. It was his approach to guitar that I found really interesting, because I remember when I was a kid, my older sister, she played fingerstyle guitar, beautiful, and I was playing with a pick because I wanted to play electric, and I was thinking, well, you have to play with a pick, right? And then I started to think, like, that if I ever wanted to do fingerstyle, I didn't want to drop the pick, like put it down or something. I wanted to be able to do it with the pick in my hand. And then I was reading about Eddie Van Halen. His approach was this hybrid picking. So, he'd pick the first three strings, well, sometimes differently depending on what he's doing, but the general concept is picking the first three strings, and then the next three strings with your fingers, right? So obviously he would pick on all the strings depending on what his approach was, but I found it so cool that he could play, like, the fingerstyle stuff, kind of on a when need be basis, like, and do stuff that's almost like a little more country-ish in a way, not country, but hard to explain, but just more delicate and, you know, with the volume down. So like, for example, I'll do some hybrid picking right now. Right, you could do that kind of stuff, and then he could swell the volume up and go into his full-on electric tone, right? So. So yeah, that kind of thing is what really intrigued me about his playing. Was he didn't think, you know, that you just have to play with a pick, or if you're gonna, you know, if you're gonna play fingerstyle, you have to be on an acoustic guitar. Like he just thought, how can I do as much as possible on this instrument at all times? Like how can I go from one thing to another, you know, seemingly with no, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, with some flow, like, so there, you know, which is where his volume control came in a lot of times. Yeah, and then like other things that I noticed in his playing was, obviously the two-hand tapping stuff was you know, he a real innovator there. But not only the two-hand tapping, also his use of bending and tapping at the same time, things like that. And you know, I only scratched the surface on that stuff like a little later in my guitar playing. I'm, you know, about 10 years ago, when I was around 30 years old, I started to get into that stuff a little bit. So things like this kind of idea. That kind of thing, right? And I've had an injury for 10 years, so, you know, I'm still fooling around with that stuff, but I can't, you know, kind of expand upon it a whole lot. I wish I could, but I can only play so much these days. But that's what I found was really interesting about his playing, was just that he really looked at the instrument, in my opinion, as what more can I do with it? What more can I do with it? And in a really complete way, you can almost tell that he must have just at times just looked at it and figured out, okay, like, you know, how can I do more with it? You know, another example is his use of harmonics. I mean, I can do a little bit here and there, and I understand a little bit about harmonics. But I mean, Eddie Van Halen, oh my God, especially as he got more into his like later 20s or mid to late 20s. I mean, he was doing stuff with harmonics obviously early, like in his, you know, when he was 19, 20 years old. But it seemed like getting into the late 80s, I mean, he just took it to another level. That's another thing, you know, I'm kind of rambling here, but that's another thing about Eddie Van Halen, is that he never stopped. He never quit getting better. He just got better and better as those years went by. It's incredible. So it's a real loss, him being gone and whatnot. obviously, you know, I'm almost awkward talking about it. It's crazy. So there's definitely some guitarists out there in Facebook land that are even way bigger, you know, Eddie Van Halen fans than I am. You know, I just consider him like one of the best. But I mean, you know, I know there's of a few in particular guitar players out there that are, you know, live, die, and breathe Eddie Van Halen. You know, which is amazing. You know, feel bad for those guys for sure. So I'm gonna outro with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I'm Van Halen licks. I'm gonna probably do some wrong. You guys can call me out on it. That's fine. I know I'm doing some wrong, like wrong keys, wrong this, wrong that. But all right, so here's a little Van Halen, a little Eddie Van Halen. Right there, even there. I haven't played that for a while, so it took me a second to. That last bit was a little bit of eruption, and I remember when I was younger trying to practice that, and it got to a point like this hand, and you know, if I had to tap with one finger I was okay, that part, and then it gets up to this part where it taps with two fingers on your picking hand, and it's just to this day it's been a challenge. So I'll try it one more time here, that section. So yeah, no. That being said, haven't played some of that in a long time, and but it really made me realize today, driving around with my for work. I have a driving job, and just driving around thinking about how much, you know, Eddie Van Halen just was such an innovator at the time. Somebody on the radio, a host, put it really well today. They said, you know, that was it. When Eddie Van Halen came along, he raised the bar so high, and so fast. It went from, you know, that with awesome guitar playing in the 70s, classic rockers and everything else. There's some awesome guitar players, but Eddie Van Halen raised the bar like huge when he came along, and just and he was only 19 years old, and just incredible what he was doing. I actually found some video, or not video. Well, it's a YouTube video, but it's like an audio clip of him jamming when he was like 15 years old in a garage, eh? And you can hear that whoever it is playing is awesome, and you can just hear the beginning of where he was going. And every once in a while he would do something, and you pick it out and you'd go, man, that was off Van Halen 1, that riff he just did, that was on Van Halen 1, you know. And just what a wild life. Like the guy was his own guitar tech, built his own custom guitars, ripped them apart at the age of 14, put them back together the way he wanted them. Nobody was doing it at that time. He was the only one doing that. Just like saying, no, I don't want a stock Strat. I don't want to stock this. I want to put a Gibson humbucker in a Strat, and he just went ahead and did it at age 14, you know, to get his sound. So yeah, no, he raised the bar for guitar playing on a lot of different levels, and it's a hell of a sad day that he's gone. But yeah, that's all I got to say. You know, I'm going to be thinking about Eddie Van Halen a lot this week, and sure many of you will as well. All right, you guys, over and out.